Welcome to the First Buck Podcast, where we feature stories about entrepreneurs and the people who support them. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello and welcome to the First Buck Podcast, brought to you by sky'sthelimit.org. We feature stories about entrepreneurs and the people who support them. And today we're joined by serial entrepreneur and author Brian Scudamore, who has always taken the road less traveled. At just 19 years old, he pioneered the industry of professional junk removal with 1-800-GOT-JUNK, turning a chore that everyone avoids into an exceptional customer service experience. I have some friends that work for 1-800-GOT-JUNK. He has scaled that business into two more home service brands, Wow One Day Printing and Shack Shine, all under the O2E brands banner. So Brian has learned the ins and outs of business by running his own and believes that anyone with a fire in their gut and a vision to do something incredible can do the same. His philosophy, WTF, willing to fail, stems from his belief in the power of dreaming big, taking risks, and learning from mistakes. Through franchising, he's giving thousands of aspiring entrepreneurs a chance to BYOB, build your own business and be your own boss, and live the dream of business ownership. So if you want to follow up on this, we've got some books for you to read. You can read WTF, Willing to Fail, How Failure Can Be Key to Success, and BYOB, Build Your Own Business, Be Your Own Boss at brianscudamore.com. So without further ado, we have a little tradition around here, though. We got to find out, how did you earn your first buck?
Yeah, so my first buck, I was a high school dropout. I was actually one course short of graduation, very ADD by nature, couldn't sit still in school, went to 14 schools actually from high school to college, just kicked out, couldn't focus. And so I started a business as someone who didn't finish high school. I started a business to pay for college. And I was in a McDonald's drive-through of all places. I saw this beat up old pickup truck in front of me. It had plywood sides on the box and it said Mark's Hauling on the side. And I looked at that truck and I'm like, I want to do what Mark's doing. I'm going to buy a truck, haul junk when people have stuff that needs to go off to the dump, and that would pay for college. Well, sure enough, I bought my truck, started a company at the time I called the Rubbish Boys. It was really just me, but I had a vision for something bigger. And I got out there, and from day one, I was making money. That first buck came from a customer where I showed up. I'd put a little ad in one of the classified newspapers, classified ad, and they called me up and I'm like, oh my gosh, this works. And I showed up, hauled away a pile of junk. It was $120 and the business proved itself that, okay, there's some cash to be made from trash. And ultimately what funded my way through through college, inspired me to drop out of college with a year left in my degree. I was learning much more about business, running a business, more than I was studying business in school. So I sat down with my father, who's a liver transplant surgeon, and said, Dad, I'm quitting school. And he thought, oh my gosh, my son's crazy. And he looks back today and goes, Brian, you made the right decision. We built a $700 million business off of what started with that first truck and a buck.
I love that. The cash out of trash. Wow, what an awesome story. Thank you for sharing that with us. So you found your first customer basically by putting an ad up in the classifieds. Talk to us a little bit about how you went from one truck to two trucks to more. Like, tell us a little bit about that sort of early scaling and how you sort of got comfortable taking increasing amounts of financial and personal risk with the business.
Yeah. So to paint the picture, we're at about 2,500 trucks with 1-800-GOT-JUNK and hundreds of more vehicles with Wow One Day Painting and Shack Shine. What started from a first truck for many years while I was funding my college education, I went to a second truck when I had the courage to drop out of school and go all in.
Yep.
I went all in on my business, and the first logical move was to prove to my father I was making a good decision and I was serious. Go buy a second truck. And so I doubled my fleet, doubled my revenue, and started to get the confidence that, wow, this could scale. I read a book called The E-Myth in 1995, about 5 years into my business. And the E-Myth is the entrepreneurial myth. It's a book that tells you to build systems in your business if you really want to scale. People don't fail, systems do. Have the systems that will allow you to grow and scale, because I can only drive one truck at a time.
Right.
But when I expand to 3, 4, 5 trucks, how am I going to have the people and the processes to make it successful? So that book, The E-Myth Revisited, inspired me to start putting systems in place and adding more trucks. And in 5 years, I was up to 5 trucks. And what I realized was there was opportunity to take what I do very well, customer experience, hauling away junk, and having someone feel so thrilled that they've got the relief of their junk being gone and they've got their space back. I can set that up in such a way where it could look and feel like a franchise, where I could have someone run Vancouver Island and Victoria. I could have someone run Seattle as we expanded to. And eventually, my business looked, felt, and acted so much like a franchise that that was the model I chose to grow with. And 10 years into the business, when I had our first franchise running, which was actually a fellow in Toronto, he ran our Vancouver operation. He had a girlfriend in Toronto. He decided to drive a truck thousands of miles across the country to start the first franchise. Now, what took me 8 years to get to 1 million in revenue, Paul Guy, our first franchise partner, did it in a year.
Whoa.
And that's when I knew I was onto something. I got a business, a franchise model, and off we scaled to build a $700 million brand today.
That is very cool. Yeah. So how did you find Paul? What's the story with that?
There was a company called College Pro Painters where students would come in and paint your home.
Yep.
And they had a real sort of business savvy behind how they were teaching young entrepreneurs to run a business to pay for college. And Paul was a VP with College Pro that when I was looking to scale my business, I went and found him. I found him through my networks, and he was the perfect guy to come in and help me put some real good systems in place in my business. But what was interesting was the opportunity that he and I saw was much bigger. I said to him, "Have you ever thought of being your own boss?" And he said, "Well, not really." I said, "Well, you got a girlfriend in Toronto. You are spending a lot of time back and forth.
Yep.
What about starting Toronto?" And his eyes lit up. We both did. And it was like that magical moment where the angels are singing, you feel like a better dancer, and you're like, wow. And that was the moment. And off he went.
That's cool. I was curious, a lot of our entrepreneurs at Sky's the Limit struggle with, making decisions about what business model to pursue. And I think it'd be interesting to hear what you think. When is when is a franchise model the right model?
Hmm. So there's two things there. One's what is the right business? I often think it's the one that's right in front of you. So I look at 1-800 Got Junk and I go, there was a pickup truck and a McDonald's drive-through. I saw that there was a need, and I'm just like, that's my opportunity. Go buy a truck for $700 and start hauling away junk. I made Dragon on a show called Dragon's Den. And one of the investments we did this year was these two women who have a company called Mint. It's environmental cleaning products.
Yep.
Their service was right in front of them. They were out cleaning Airbnbs for a living, and they were using harmful products that made one of them sick. And instead of just looking at the negativity in life, they said, these products shouldn't make you sick. What would it take to have something healthier? And they've created a $5 million business in cleaning that is just taking off. So I think it's looking right in front of you. What's in front of your face every single day that you could do better than anyone else? Now, how do you choose a model like franchising? Franchising to me is a way of raising money. Some people go public, some people raise seed capital, some people borrow from the bank of mom and dad. For me, raising money through franchising was I could give my recipe of proven success to someone to have them run a business under my recipe, under our brand, 1-800 Got Junk. We could teach them, we could support them. They don't need the idea, they just need to be able to execute. And so franchising is an expensive model to put into place. You do need, I think, 50 to 100 franchise partners before you start making money in franchising because you're taking a little piece from everybody. But it's a great way to raise capital to then scale a model quickly if you find the right people.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. So a lot of young
Mm,
entrepreneurs, I think, struggle with this concept of raising money, which is they all think that if they just had a lot of money, that their problems would be sorted and fixed. And
mm,
I mean, I'd be interested to hear, what advice do you give to early stage businesses, and where should they be focusing and spending their time when they're always sort of stressing about maybe
mm,
raising money, but is that really
mm.
the first place that they should spend their time?
Yeah, my belief strongly, and not everyone would agree, wait as long as you possibly can to raise money. Wait as long as you can before you start spending a ton of money. So in my case, 1-800 Got Junk, it was 10 years before we franchised. I figured out every system and process so that Paul Guy in Toronto could run it as well or clearly better than I could ever run it because the processes were so tight. Where I've seen so many potential franchisors fail is they go, we've been in business for 2 years. Everything's great. Now our operations aren't profitable, but we're going to go scale this. It doesn't work. You need the time and energy to make sure everything is in place to scale successfully. If your franchise partners fail, the whole thing implodes. I've seen people on the raising money side, seed capital, they go out and raise money. They then have that $1 million check and they don't spend money as carefully or as wisely as they did when they bootstrapped. All this money comes in. Oh my gosh, big parties, this and that. And it kills a lot of companies. And I see you nodding and you get it, right? We've all seen our friends and entrepreneurs who've gone bankrupt, who've made a business fail because they've spent too much money too quickly. So, back to my advice, wait as long as you can before raising money until you have such a proven model that can scale. It's not a race. It's a long-term get it right so that you can sustainably grow.
So one of the things I was reading about in your background, and I know it's something you're passionate about, is this, building cultures and building teams. And
Mhm,
I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. I mean, no one achieves anything on their own, and I think
mhm,
building your team is probably one of the most, it is absolutely foundational and critical to putting the components in place to, help yourself and then help the whole organization. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about team building and
mhm,
maybe talk us through, who some lessons you have about hiring and how to do it well, and what you're still learning about that. I
mhm,
think any business owner will say, they they've made some amazing hires over their careers and they've made some
mhm,
disastrous ones, and it's not always obvious what works and what doesn't. But I'd be interested
mhm.
if there are any pearls of wisdom in there
Yeah.
that you've gathered over the years.
Yeah, so by absolute fluke, I'm wearing my It's All About People hat today. I like on a podcast just to wear different hats with different slogans of ours. And It's All About People was learned 5 years into my business. I had a team of 11 people, a company of 11, and I realized I was not having fun anymore. It was scaling, but not the way I had imagined. I had, they say one bad apple spoils the whole bunch. I had 9 out of 11, I think, were bad apples. They just weren't a fit for me. They didn't have the attitude that this is a business and we're taking care of customers. They weren't happy, smiley, friendly people. And I realized I needed to make a change.
Yeah.
So I brought all 11 people in for a morning meeting. Even though there were two I could have maybe kept, I was worried that maybe the culture was beyond repair. And I sat down and I started with two powerful words. I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I've let you down as a leader. I might not have found the right people nor treated you right. I'm not having fun in my business. It's not working. And I need to start again. And so I went from 11 down to zero, from 5 trucks down to just the one I could drive. And I said, time to rebuild. And rebuilding with this
Wow.
premise of it's all about people. Find the right people and treat them right. The easiest thing in my entire business growth over the years to do is the team building when we've gotten the right people in place. It just happens like magic. It's like a good house party where it's just like, this is the place to be. And so we focus on finding the right people. And the way we do that, we call it the beer and barbecue test. When I sit down and interview someone, I say to myself, would I have a beer with this person after the interview? Do I find them interesting and interested? Do they have a shared common passion? Are they just the right fit for this place? And then we go through what I call the barbecue test. I then visually think through what would they be like at a barbecue, a company barbecue? Would they fit in? Would they add to? We're not looking for everybody to be same, same. We're looking for diversity of opinions and backgrounds and skills and so on. But does it just fit? Do they fit at that company barbecue? And we use it in our interviewing. It's one thing for someone to sit down and tell me about a time you did this, this, and that, and how did it go? But it's another thing to sit down and just go, what do you like to do for fun? What makes you tick? What are you fired up about in this world? And getting to know someone like you're having a beer together, I think gives you a completely different perspective. We hire on attitude, we train on skill. And team building is easy when we've got the right people in place.
Hire on attitude and train on skill. I love that.
Mhm.
You talk a lot about how important mentorship is, and I was
Mhm.
interested to hear who were your mentors and to talk a little bit about the dynamic you've had with people that have shared experiences with you and how you get the most out of those types of, I would say, like transmissions of knowledge.
Mhm. Yeah, so to me, it's interesting. I developed a little bit of a philosophy. I created what I call a mentor board of advisors, an
I love this.
MBA. I couldn't get my own MBA in life, right? Clearly couldn't finish high school or college. Why try again? And I created this mentor board of advisors, which to me meant when I'm trying to solve a problem, when I'm looking for answers, who's the best on the planet to go to? I could read a book. I find an article about someone that imparts some wisdom, and then I reach out and have a further conversation. I've done it with Seth Godin, who I think is one of the world's most brilliant
Amazing
marketers.
marketer. Yeah, he's been on the podcast and he was so good at
Oh,
teaching me about like product market fit and thinking about communication. He's amazing.
he's phenomenal. So I picked up the phone one day and reached out, and he took my call, and I met in his office in New York, and we just connected and we've kept in touch. To me, it's not one person as a mentor forever where there's a formalized relationship. It's who is someone that if I'm trying to solve a problem, I need to reach out to and connect with. So I have hundreds of people. And, I have people in life that help me with, anxiety, business growth, family challenges, you name it, whatever the thing is that I'm trying to solve and get better at, who can I reach out to that can help support? And it's amazing. And people reach out to me all the time. And if I can help, I'm there. It's usually just a phone call or a Zoom. Uh, and we talk about something they need to unlock. But I think entrepreneurs are really good at helping other entrepreneurs because they remember the early days of what it was like when they were getting going.
Yep, 100%. All right. I'll finish with one last question for you. I think you've been really open about, the some of the challenges I think that entrepreneurs face, whether it's the anxieties or the stress.
Mm,
Pursuing entrepreneurship can feel kind of scary.
mm,
So be interested, what tips would you give, the aspiring entrepreneurs listening?
mm.
What are some things they can think about to help manage the stress that comes with running and building your own business?
Yeah, so you mentioned my book earlier. Thank you. My first book was called WTF, which stands for Willing to Fail. And it's the one thing that I think I figured out that wipes away any anxiety in business is everything you do when it gets hard, when something doesn't go as planned, you go, wow, I just made a mistake, or I really screwed up here. What did I learn? What is the one seemingly, or what is the one great thing that can happen from this seemingly hard time? And I often write it down. And sometimes there's a big list. Every challenge I've ever had in business was an important challenge to have. I wouldn't take it away. I needed to learn that lesson to get to where we are today. We couldn't build a $700 million business if it wasn't for all the mistakes that paved that way. And I think tying it back, what's the one word of advice? Be willing to fail. Be willing to take a risk. Now, don't make stupid risks, but take calculated risks or whatever you're comfortable with. But when it doesn't go right, when you get a no, collect that no. Collect a whole bunch of no's until you get a yes. When we got on the Oprah Winfrey show, I don't know how many dozens and dozens of calls and emails it took. No, 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 before we get a yes. It took 5 to get on the Ellen DeGeneres show. It took 3 to get on Guy Raz's How I Built This Podcast. Like, people give up too soon versus having the ability to go, I might fail right now, but it's that failure, that learning, that rejection that will get me to greatness.
I think that's an excellent lesson. I love the sort of visual of like the mistakes pave the way. And in business, you're going to have lots of setbacks. You're going to have lots of obstacles, and each one of those is a learning opportunity. And I think, as you mentioned, looking back on those and writing the list down of, what did I learn from this?
Yeah.
And if you build up that knowledge over the duration of time, stick with it, and have the sort of mindset of these are all learning opportunities. That's something in common I've found with almost every entrepreneur that we've interviewed, that has sort of reflected back on what sort of their journey was like and what made it possible for them to survive it. So thank you so much. I loved the whole story from the very beginning. Having an ADD mindset out of high school and then starting up something from scratch, figuring out, that you needed to put a team in place, and sometimes rebooting your whole team or reinstalling the operating system is sometimes necessary, to scaling, to learning about franchising, and to relentlessly knocking on doors to get those opportunities to tell your story. This has been an absolutely excellent sort of overview. So, Brian, I really appreciate your time today, and we'll put those books into the links on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's an honor to be able to meet you and to speak with your group of amazing entrepreneurs. Thanks, Nic.
Thank you. All right. At skyslimit.org, we connect underestimated entrepreneurs with volunteer business professionals for free one-on-one mentoring. We also provide business guides to all our members and monthly funding opportunities. So if you liked what you heard, please subscribe and share the podcast.
Thanks for listening to the First Buck Podcast. Don't forget to join the community of underrepresented entrepreneurs and their supporters by signing up at skysthelimit.org. Click subscribe, and we'll see you next time.